I get so cringe when I hear people say, oh, all you need to do is sell. Some of my competitors were like, just sell, sell, sell. And I'm like, you own a $500,000 to $700,000 gym. You're basically replacing being an owner of a gym to being the sales guy. Like you need to do other things, you know? Yeah, you don't. And then you don't have time for other things. And then what ends up happening, you're spending 8 hours a day, probably not 8, but you're spending probably 4 to 5 hours a day calling all these people and maybe selling one that's going to last 2 months when all you had to do was take that one incremental small step and say, how can we provide a better experience for our customers and create something that makes them happy and makes them motivated. And that's what's going to move the needle way more when you're in that higher stage of gym ownership.
Hey, hello, and welcome to the Feel Strong Fitness Podcast. My name is Justin McClintock. What if your business wasn't just about sales and clients, but was about creating a real connection and leading with purpose? My guest today, Zach Colman, founder of GymMark, shares his powerful insights on how gym owners, and really anyone building a brand, can transform their business by putting their mission and values front and center. It's about more than transactions. It's about building a loyal community that feels a true, authentic connection to who you are and what you stand for. We explore what it means to lead authentically, why personal growth is crucial for business growth, and how aligning your values with your brand can drive lasting success. Whether you're a gym owner or just looking to elevate your brand, this episode is packed with insights that are going to help you shift your mindset and build something meaningful. Zach Colman is on the Feel Strong podcast. I'm and own Feel Strong Fitness. It's a one-on-one coaching company, mostly online, some in person. Everything is super custom from the ground up, mostly like movement-based solutions. So it starts with the exercise and the movement, but we do an enormous amount of education, personal development, lifestyle adjustment, really like getting to know each person and then seeing what dials we need to twist. And we have a pretty deep toolbox for doing that. And one of the things that people say a lot of nice things, but the personal development part is something that ends up really speaking to people. That's not why they come. No one comes and says, I want to be a better mom. But the feedback we get is, I didn't realize this would make me a better mom. You know, the principles of stress management have helped me work with my kids. And one of the points that I think it was Barbara, forgive me if I'm getting the name wrong, was talking about personal development through brand principles. And I thought that was a really interesting idea and sort of something we try and I do a little bit of coach mentoring also, and trying to talk to people about using their values, using their mission as like a decision framework. And that will lead you to the right answer. Instead of having 90 options, like which way should I go, whether it's a personal decision or a business decision or a brand decision, if you can get clearer on your values and what you believe and who you are or who your brand is, it becomes much, much, much simpler and whittles away, 78 out of 80 of those choices.
Yeah, definitely. Funny enough, I just did a TEDx on this 2 weeks ago. And so I'll send it to you. Possibly your audience too, if you're okay with it, on this concept, first and foremost. But me personally, I had complete burnout like 2-3 years ago. I was always big in working out. Take a step back. I wasn't always big in it. About 12 years ago, I had a situation where my now wife left me. I was very heavily abusing, alcohol, more so because of my stress and my anxiety. I came to find out, and I actually took up working out back then. And back then, I think since I was in my mid-20s, I thought it was more of a vanity metric. I have to look better because I want to be seen. I want to be heard from other people. And I thought that was a path towards that. But it actually, that time, it changed my life. It put me on a controlled kind of situation that I had control over, right? I had control over my workouts. I had control over my eating. It's probably two of the only things as us as people have complete control over. And yes, you can go into if someone has, issues with, physical issues of some sort, but still there's always ways to find those kind of things that are in your control. And 2 years ago, I kind of lost my working out. And still to this day, I still struggle with it a little bit, but I had 3 kids. I have 3 kids. I have a 5-year-old, I have a 3-year-old, I have a 6-month-old. And so I'm already getting not as much sleep as I like. And my time frame, my time span is all over the place. And I had to bring working out back in because I was like, okay, what from my past, why do I have burnout? Like what is causing my burnout? And it was leading to those personal things that I love to do that helped me refine my personal values. Like these are what I value. Like this is what I value. And then I kind of had to say, all right, how can I take those personal values within my business and what I'm trying to do, and how can I utilize them to grow my team, grow my clientele, like the people that I want to work with, less so of I'm just going to focus on companies that, and it's always important in sales, of whatever business you're in, like people that make this type of money, do this type of industry. But mine was more of the psychological counterpart. Like I want to partner with people. I want to help them grow. And the only way I'm going to do that is if we see each other as equals and me not just as a vendor, So I utilize my values, and I continue to utilize and improve and evolve those values. And I think that going back to the branding principle side, how many times do you see a company have values just written up on a wall, and you're like, oh yeah. And that's kind of the concept. It's like a lot of people create these values because they think, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. But do you really live by those values? Does your team live by those values? Do you have a mission or a vision for what you want out of your life and your business? Because if you don't, you're going to fall into a spectrum of, like you said, you're not going to be aligned. And there's nothing wrong with what I like to call a personal rebrand or a business rebrand. And I think when people go through those rebrand periods, it's them evolving to the next stage of what they want for their vision. Having some sort of vision is only going to at least allow you to follow a path towards, all right, remember, this is what we're trying to do. And I'll use this as a good example. Through going back to the gym, through going back to working out, getting back in my meditation, bringing back in, funny enough, writing. I'm a creative at heart. Like I've always been a very creative person. I got my bachelor's in it. I was in it in the corporate world. Lost that when I started to grow my business because I'm also an integrator. So I was creating all the operations. I was doing all that stuff. And I was like, why do I have burnout? And then I realized, going back to the gym, I was like, I'm not connecting. I'm not allowing my creative side to do what I'm meant to do, which is create and build. I was building stuff, but I wasn't having conversations with the team. We were just kind of, all right, get this done. All right, sounds good. There was no collaboration. There was no, okay, is this working? Is this not type of environment? And so once I realized that I had that connection back in, I realized that value was so important to me. I even changed the way I've done my outreach. Like I'm a very big component on meeting people, partnering, and there's no way I'm going to create a solid partnership by directly sending cold email pitches to 1 million people and saying like that's not going to build a connection because I don't know if they need what I need and they don't know who I am. I need to build a relationship. Does that still mean some of that stuff's going to work? Those relationships aren't going to grow? No. I mean, I had a conversation with the gym owner yesterday. I went to his facility and he wasn't necessarily at that point yet where he saw the value in the connection and all that stuff. He wasn't there yet. So I necessarily couldn't help them, but I was still there for him to be like, hey, great relationship. Why don't we keep this going? I'll introduce you to someone or you can introduce someone to me and try to still build a relationship. Right. And that's just a kind of example of my connection pillar and how and funny enough, my branding principles are funny enough, my values. It's the way it turned out.
Well, I know you say that jokingly, but the leading from those values, as we were saying earlier, then not only does it work, not only does it make the decision making easier, but something you alluded to is it feels good on the other side, right? Like if you work backwards, there's lots of Small example, Feel Strong is a one-on-one business. We only do custom. We only do one thing for one person and another person. I am upbraided and lectured by business gurus on a regular basis that this is no way to run a business. It's impossible to scale. You need to run a course. You need to sell a template. What are you doing? Yeah, but I don't want to, I don't want to do that. Like if I making $1 million, whatever, a month, selling a group template and fixing my spreadsheet and not talking to people and not getting really into someone's life and problems and issues and successes, that's the fun stuff. That's where I find the wins. And then I find ways to, make a living doing it. But the other stuff sounds terrible. It's like, well, that's just a prison. I don't want to build that. And other people will be happy doing it. I assume that a bunch of those people are happy doing it. Leading from those values and mission, then there's a pretty good chance you're going to be happy and feel ethical and, all of those other things on the other side when it works.
Well, and it's funny you say that because I feel the same way, and I feel that same pressure. I hear it all the time from business gurus, mentors, even mentors that own. I have a few mentors that own multi-million-dollar businesses, and you hear the same thing. They're like niche, and systematize. And I was funny enough, I told my wife this the other day, and I bring it up a couple times. I'm like, I think the fact that I'm trying to follow a niche is actually what's holding me back, because I'm the same way. When we develop these, and I'll use the marketing side, for example. Do we have a niche? Yes. I focus very heavily on GymMark, which is tailored towards certain types of business owners, but I don't niche to everyone in that niche. They have to have the values, very similar values as I have, right? But when it comes to my larger agency, where we work on large branding projects and large web development projects, niching isn't necessarily, it needs to be customized. Every business is different. It doesn't matter who your gym is, like what gym you have is. Like, you're going to be different. You want to be different. We need to make you different. And so why would I come in and come up with this tailored solution to bring you, we'll say, 1 million leads tomorrow, if you're still going to fall into the same mistakes after you sell that business, right? And so I'm very much component of, and that's why I've been really preaching and pushing myself to more of the consulting side. Like you said, I'd rather help someone transform and learn to fish, just do it for them, and have them fall into the same mistakes a year or 2 years down the road.
100%. And that's why I like what you said about forming partnerships as opposed to just acquiring clients, which would be another way to say that, right? We do something similar. I gave a talk to some coaches the other day, and they didn't believe me when I said every time someone sits down on a consult to potentially become a Feel Strong client, they are trying hard to sell themselves to me. We've got limited space. We've got limited bandwidth. I know I can only do this up to so many people. So it's much more of a, hey, tell me everything about yourself, because we both need a really compelling reason to do this. Otherwise, it's going to be a waste of our time. And it's not a velvet rope scenario, but it's, unless you really need this and you really need to be here, I'm more likely to give you all the free education and advice I can, and or refer you somewhere else. And that makes it such an easy conversation, because now I'm not trying to be a cool sales guy and use these cool terms and lead people, down this whatever shaped road the last guy who wrote the book is trying to lead people down, but just learn about someone, figure out where we land. And so often it's someone who would not necessarily be my ideal avatar on paper, right? They aren't coming back from pain. They're not a busy mom. They're not a stressed out professional, but it's this incredibly compelling story. I'm like, yeah, well, that would be life-changing. Well, that sounds really hard. Okay, you've tried 10 other things and they haven't worked. Confident that we can be successful here. Yeah, we should definitely do this. And now it feels like a supportive partnership and a real relationship.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, because at the end of the day, I feel like, for instance, my purpose is very similar to your purpose, which is helping my purpose is helping people find their community, and if you're a purpose-driven person like myself, which it seems like you are, you have a very similar concept. You're like, I want to help people find their place here. And if you don't match this community, then let me find somewhere that you can match. Let me find a partner that I can match for you. Because we're all here for the same thing. It's to make our world a better place, really, at the end of the day. And I feel like a lot of people lose that. They lose that for the money. Nothing against some people for wanting to make money. Money is still important. You still have to grow a business. You still have to focus on top line and bottom line. But I really highly feel like, why would I be doing this just for the money? Monies are just random numbers that are on a computer screen at the end of the day.
I will never forget. I was at someone else's medical school graduation years ago. This is like 15 years ago, and the speaker got up to talk, and they were a very well renowned physician, and the first thing they said is, "Some of you have decided to get into this field because you would like to make money and you would like to be well off. You've made a huge catastrophic mistake. There are far more efficient ways to make money. If that's why you've done this, I promise you should quit. You should go into finance. It'll take you another 2 years. You'll be happier. For those of you who want to help people and change the world, congratulations, you're in the right place." And that like stuck in my brain and has never left. And especially with something like, I do fitness. There's far more efficient ways to make money. Like most people don't make money, which is also a hill that I'll die on, of coaches not being professional or not charging for their services or being mistreated by gyms. This idea of personal development through brand principles, and you're the brand expert guy, I am not. I find that people get caught up trying to be something they're not, or trying to be something they don't really believe in, or trying to be somebody else. Like, I really admire this guy or this influencer or this brand, but they don't really understand the whys behind it. So it ends up feeling inauthentic because it really is unauthentic. And then they start over, and then they start over, and they kind of go through this cycle of every couple of years trying to restart because they're never starting from a real place. Is that something that does this sound familiar? Is this something you?
Oh, I mean, I'm a preacher of what I do, right? I tell my wife the other day, like, our tagline, what we try to say to people is we help athletic driven brands find their why through the brand identity, which is very similar as utilizing the branding principles, right? And I mean, I had to struggle through it myself, right? And I think that it's very common for all of us and going back to what I said earlier, for us to evolve and change. Our values are going to change. They're going to evolve. And it's a clear sign of what you said. I mean, I don't want to bash any fake guru out there, but when I see a fake guru on the internet that goes, "Hey, how to make $1 million tomorrow," I cringe, because I'm like, where's the purpose behind that? Like, we're all here. Okay, you can have $1 million, but apparently you haven't gotten to the point yet where you've realized that it's the journey. Very similar to trying to buy that nice house or that nice car. Let's say that you do want a nice house, you do want a nice car. Nothing wrong with that. You want what you want, right? But being able to put it in your budget, like, hey, in 2 years, I'm gonna save up to buy this car, I think is more worthwhile in that journey itself, on that accomplishment, than it is to actually go out and say, "Oh, I just scammed." And I'm not saying fake gurus are scammers. What I'm saying, if you look at scammers in general, yeah, for the most part. I mean, but there's a fine line there. I mean, I've struggled with myself, and something that I've continued to have to work on is with me being authentic. I try to be more vulnerable. I try to go online. I try to be vulnerable with the situations that I deal with, because it makes me human, and it actually helps me grow. But so many people online have a fake authenticity to them, that they say those things, they try to be authentic, and people can't tell the difference. So they're just kind of fooling themselves. But I'm like, well, I don't want to be seen as a fake guru. So that's something that I'm working on right now, right? Like, how do I see myself and connect with myself enough where I can build that confidence to be able to do that stuff? And confidence is that second pillar I kind of try to go through. And besides connection, it's the confidence side of the branding principle is, how and when and where you're spreading your message. Like, it's okay to jump online and be like, do a live and have crappy video, or crappy this or crappy that, or have your message need to be tailored, but you're still working it out, because that shows that you're learning and growing. And then you could see it, take that failure, and how do you make it 1% better every day, right? How do you learn from that, instead of having an ego and being like, oh, I can do this, I can do that. And I try to, when we develop brands for individuals or corporations, one of the biggest misalignments I see is they just come in and they're like, I just want that logo. Just create a logo, just create some color schemes for me. And we create fantastic brands like we do from the visual communication side, like we do a great job. But the problem is that I see is is that they create them, but they don't create them around their vision and their values because they don't know them. And so it is really just a logo. They're getting exactly what they're getting. They're like, all right, you're putting something out there, but does that really show who you are, what you're trying to do, your message? Are you confidently displaying how you're different? I don't know if that answered your question. I kind of went on a tangent there a little bit.
I think you did answer my question and open up some other cool lanes. And I totally agree. I absolutely did. We're on our second brand, our second logo, as it were. But years ago, I remember a friend of mine who knows a little bit about branding told me, he's like, dude, your logo isn't your brand. Your brand is when someone talks to their friend about you, whatever comes out of their mouth, that's your brand. You're not even in control of it. You can control how you communicate it, how it looks. You can do everything you can to try and make sure you assuage and how people are going to experience it. And then you have to listen to what people are telling you. And that will either tell you you're making a huge mistake, or certainly in my case, guide you further down the right path. 5 years ago, I wouldn't have guessed that I'm working mostly with the people I'm working with. I have found my perfect people. It's like, oh, wait, I'm really good at this. They respond really well to it. This is excellent. But I didn't just, but I was guided there by trying to lead from good principles and then listening. Something really interesting. You said that bit about going live with potentially crappy video and not having your message ironed out. I think that's one of the most valuable things that especially newer people can do is just, and I equate it to fitness, like you need to get some reps in. No one expects your first back squat, everyone's first back squat, whatever it was garbage. Promise it was garbage. And you learned and you formed new synapses and your muscles adapted and your joints slightly changed shape and everything got better. And now you're really good at it. If you were terrified to get, to hold your phone up and speak into it and say something you think you believe in, you have to do that. And the first time is going to be terrible. And the second time will be better. The next time will be better. We've deliberately, I believe this is true, I've never taken down an Instagram post or a podcast. I'm not out of a bunch of the early ones. If you scroll back, it's like, whoa, what the? And then it gets messier and messier and more fragmented and the colors get weird and the video is garbage. I believe episode 1 of this podcast actually starts with a false take. It's like, hey, hello. Wait, is this? Okay, good. Hey, everyone. I think that's literally the first 15 seconds of the first podcast. And I just left it up because that's also the evolution. Telling people to get reps in, which means going outside of that safety zone and potentially being a little vulnerable. That's where all the opportunity and that's where all the growth lies. You were talking about being committed to running this smaller agency, 8 to 10 people, and not having to grow an empire that might involve kind of cutting the soul out of your business.
Yeah. And I think that, maybe in 3 or 4 or 5 years, things could change. But right now I'm at a point where my vision is to have work-life balance, be around my kids, work with, 10 to 20 clients at a time. And that's what I feel like I can do to make a difference in this world right now. And so that's my vision. That's my goal. If that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. I think that, so I know and talk to a lot of gym owners and they regularly struggle with wanting to be more successful. And a bunch of them want to be more successful so they can support their staff, right? There's lots of people, especially in the coaching industry. I said something about it earlier. There's a ton of coaches who want to be coaches for a living and are something else. And they coach a couple hours on the side. And that's, I'm of the opinion it's kind of impossible to be the best version of yourself you can be part-time and kind of impossible to be a great professional coach if 40 hours of your week are doing something else. So these gym owners who really want to support a small team and do end up taking lots of sort of short-term measures to keep things afloat and, bring in, cold leads and do a 6-week challenge and do these very short things when what they need to do is take a couple steps back and make sure that everything is really grounded in that mission. And that will make things simpler. And then you can find the clients and the people and the members that are needed to support the staff, as well as making sure the staff who should be there are there. I imagine you run into this on a pretty regular basis. People want to come work for GymMark. Well, is this the right person? Their resume is kick-ass. Are they going to actually work with what we want to do here as a team?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it comes, I mean, this is my jam. This is what I love to talk about, because I think that, gym owners have been told for years that, and I mean, yeah, some of these are my competitors, but at the same time, I look at it and I'm like, this isn't how you grow a gym. You can, but they say a lot of stuff like, hey, we're going to teach you how to sell. I want you to spray the wall and call everyone in your local area and try to get that next sale. And I totally understand when you're going through a launching period and you're probably around the $250K a year mark, that you're still in validation mode. You still need to find people to come in. You need to hustle, but there comes a time when growing your gym, what got you there is not going to get you to that next stage. And a lot of these gym owners get into owning a gym. Usually they were a personal trainer in the past and they're like, we want to continue to help a community. We're going to continue working out with them and doing all that stuff. But what ends up happening? They lose that for something that they don't really like to do, which is then sales. And there's nothing wrong with taking higher leadership roles within your business as you continue to grow. But I think that's the problem. I think they push themselves into a manager type role, not thinking that, hey, really all I need to do here is become a good person, actually bring the gym back into my life. Does that mean you still have to train? No, it probably means, hey, now is the time, like I said I had to do, where it's like I have my 1 to 2 hours in the morning where I work out, for myself, or with some employees or whatever I may do. And that may be my morning mental space myself. And that's what's going to give me the now to continue to push the gym to the next stage. And so I have like it kind of backwards than most. I'm like, all right, yeah, you're going to get to a point where you're going to have to delegate. You also don't want to lose yourself. You want to still be able to do the things that you love to do and kind of fit that in. And that is the point, I think, usually around that mark when it's like, all right, here's the next, you're hitting that first plateau in gym ownership where your team, customer service, and experiences are really going to start taking a factor. And I think it's partially because of our environment and the way that brick and mortars have grown. But it also is contributed to the owner of the company becoming more of a leader and not a manager. And a lot of that comes down to what we really preach, which is, hey man, like very similar to what you were saying with the workouts when you said earlier on, like customization and doing this, like you're going to have to start finding ways to allow the people that want to work out at your gym come to you out of differentiation and out of positioning. You can use marketing in that way. I've seen 90% of the gym owners that I talk to, the reason they're so successful is the ones that are successful is because they took that leap and understood, hey, I'm in a community. I'm going to leverage my digital marketing as much more of a community type of environment, and not going to say create a community page. What I'm just saying is use it as a community environment alongside what I'm doing out in my local community, and that's usually, and to put it simple, I think I usually ask clients this all the time. I'm like, all right, what is your close rate on those challenges? And they're usually like, 10%. What's your lifetime value? Well, they usually come for the free session and they leave after 2 months. And I'm like, well, what about the people that walk in your door? What about the people that already found you online, already looked you up and said, oh, this is the type of gym based off their positioning that I feel like matches my ethos and my values. I want to go and have a conversation with them. And that's where the experiences and the positioning come into play quite a bit, because that's usually a 50% close. They don't need no gimmicky challenge. They want to find a place where they feel welcome and they feel part of a community because of what you said. It helps them become a better mom or a better spouse or a better business owner or whatever, better employee. Like that's why they want to work out, not because they want to just grow some muscle.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And I think everything you just said is correct. And when people show up feeling that they already know you a little bit or know your brand a little bit, and they know that you guys kind of vibe together, like you are so much closer to being able to have, one, have a real conversation, and two, not have to do any weird sales tactics or tricks. And then the potential, especially if, and I've seen this so many times, if the gym owner is the one doing all or most of the sales, a lot of times they're not great at it and they don't like doing it, but they feel this responsibility. Like, well, it's me and it's the bottom line and I'm the one cutting the rent check. So I have to be, I have to be in the room when this happens, because every close that doesn't happen, somehow that's my fault or my responsibility. But if as something you said beautifully earlier, if you lead instead of manage, it makes it so much easier for the right people to show up. And then anyone can close that person. Because you just have to tell them, oh yeah, what? Oh yeah, these are our hours. This is how it happens. Yep, we do that. Yep, exactly right. What do you want to do? Oh, okay. Why do you want to do that?
Well, and it's funny because I hear this all the time. I hear this all, and this is very big, especially for the people that just believe branding is a logo, or a pretty website, is they think that these people are going to come in and let me give you an example. When I had a sit down with the gym a couple weeks ago, I went into his gym and he was definitely a weightlifting focused gym, like heavy lifting focused gym, but he was still smaller. And I say this all the time. I'm like, if the experience that you're providing looks like that, feels like that, no wonder you're only charging $30. You have to, I'm not saying money is a huge component, but you have to provide an experience that matches the ethos of the community you're trying to evolve. That could be customer service. That could be back to the branding principles. Like, you need to make sure, hey, like, I'm focusing and positioning around this person because I care about them, because I understand who they are. I understand their pains and their weaknesses. And so that is going to be something that these people really relate to and are attracted to. And so when people come to me and are like, I don't see an ROI in branding, I'll just have my nephew create me a logo and throw it up. It's like, all right, but then it is just a logo. You're not you're not developing something that's meant to have this feeling of attracting the type of audience that you feel like you can help the most. And that's what you need to provide your experience around. Is there technical stuff around that? There always is. But that's really what it comes down to. You should have people go online, be able to find right away, like, oh, let me find a gym in my area because for me anyway, I know if I'm going to pick a gym, especially because it's a reoccurring model, I want one close to my house. I don't like working out from home. I like having my away space. So I'll look at the gyms within a 2-mile radius. I will pick the gym 2 miles away and pay more if I feel like that gym matches my values. If I'm like, oh, I'm going to go in here, I'm going to feel comfortable around the people, the customer service, that we have similar values. They understand what I'm going through for my physical side and my mental side. And so they've built the experience around that, right? I'll pick that 2 mile, but I promise you that that's probably your first kind of interaction you're going to have. And that's going to cause better ROI because you're going to have people finding you and you're going to be able to charge more, because I'd rather pay $200, $300 for a gym membership if I feel like, oh, I'm going to love this place. The one in the garage down the street that I'm like, well, like I'm in there for 30 minutes and I want to get out because I just don't feel comfortable here.
Are scary. And I think I got tetanus from that last piece of equipment. And
yeah. And so that's why I've really personally, back to those branding principles, I've really tried to get people, especially gym owners, going to that next stage, that the things that were working before aren't necessarily going to work now, because now is when you need to start focusing on, this is when you focus on who you are, like you as a person. I get so cringe when I hear people say, oh, all you need to do is sell. Some of my competitors are like, just sell. And I'm like, you own a $500,000 to $700,000 gym. You're basically replacing being an owner of a gym to being the sales guy. Like you need to do other things.
Unless that's what fires you up. And if you're the technician, exercise science guy who decided to open a gym, it's probably not because you wanted to do 15 sales calls a day.
Yeah, you don't. And then you don't have time for other things. And then what ends up happening? You're spending 8 hours a day, probably not 8, but you're spending probably 4 to 5 hours a day calling all these people and maybe selling one that's going to last 2 months, when all you had to do was take that one incremental small step and say, how can we provide a better experience for our customers, and create something that makes them happy and makes them motivated. And that's what's going to move the needle way more when you're in that higher stage of gym ownership.
You don't start, as I've seen several times, you don't start resenting your community and your members because you're calling people for 5 hours a day, and suddenly you have all these people who, on the outside, like, you run a successful gym. Congratulations. And they can't stand it. They hate their job. They hate what they built, but they don't see a way out. I thought the stages of gym development you mentioned earlier is really interesting because it reminds me a lot of fitness and a little bit about the fitness journey you mentioned for yourself earlier, in that, what got you here is unlikely to get you to the next stage. And we run into this with people all the time. I've got a whole segment of clients who, they were crazy fit in their 20s. And then life, kids, career, COVID. It's been 10 years and they've gone back and tried to do those old workouts or those old classes or those or whatever, and it doesn't work and it's not responding. And they're getting hurt, or it feels bad, or their confidence is gone. And they come and say, well, what do I do? I say, well, good news, not bad, because what got you here isn't going to get you to the next place. We need to dig into, as you said, the why behind why you want to do something in the first place. We will reverse engineer that into what your day-to-day should look like. And if you don't start from there, especially that idea of, like, for a gym, like, what community do you want to build? What do you want it to feel like? What do you want it to look like? Then you can back into the color scheme and the location and all of that. But if you do it backwards, ugh.
If you do it backwards, honestly, like I said earlier, you're just creating a pretty picture. There's definitely science in the visual communication side that we go around with that stuff, but a lot of that has to come through the person that we're working with. When a client comes to us and is like, just throw some cats up on the back of the website because I like cats, I'm going to be like, all right, but is that really going to lead you to the outcome that you're going for? What personally for you in your vision matches these what are the values that you have? And then how do we take those values and then make and develop something around those values? So like you said, you be nice to somebody, or your personal personality is attributed to something, so that when I drive down the street and I see 6 different gym promotions going up, I can just see that brand up there and I go, oh, I know that's Ted. I know I love that. I love that guy. I have to send my friend there. I have to I want to be an advocate for my gym. And that's a huge component too. And I mean, I'll use another good example. Yeah. Cause I've been able to figure out, I'm a very logical person too. Like, I figured out the stages of gym ownership, and they're not perfect because every gym is different, but pretty much like where certain stages are at in the development of a gym. And there's also the opposite, like you said, from a personal. I remember when I was working out very heavily, probably, 5 days a week, 1 to 2 hours, my macros were on point pretty much every day. And I had a trainer sit down with me, and I realized that because I was getting hurt a lot, I realized I started contributing different types of muscles because I was trying to lift heavier, because I had an egotistical type mentality around it. And I feel like the same thing can happen to a gym. Like, oh, we're going to start hiring all these people tomorrow, but you haven't figured out your values. So you're taking a step forward when you're not necessarily ready for that. And you're putting yourself in a situation where you're strengthening the wrong muscles at the wrong time, and you fail, and then you think, oh, that's not the way I need to go. And it's like, no, it's the wrong time for you to do that.
That's the idea of brand strategy as ego lifting, I think, is a really powerful one. Not that brand strategy is bad, but that you can do brand strategy in the same way you can be an ego lifter. And boy, it looks good on Instagram. Man, it's cool to write it down, but it actually ends up not working out. And when it goes badly, it goes terrifically badly. Jumping on something we were just talking about, I know there's going to be a million reasons because everyone's different, generally, why does someone want to hire GymMark when someone comes to you? Because I imagine this involves the gym owner, I assume, being a little vulnerable and being willing to go through some of these processes and just raising their hand and saying, yeah, I need help. It's not, something isn't right. Even if I just feel like it's great, but I need a refresh and I need to know, I don't know what the next step is. I'm growing, but I don't know what's coming. Why does someone come to GymMark and raise their hand?
One, I'm very big on partnerships. Like we talked about earlier, I value that. So I don't necessarily come in if I can't help you. I have partners, and I'll use this as an example. I had a gym come to me 2 months ago, and they were at the very beginning launching of their gym, and I'm like, this is not the time for you to do what we are providing. I'm not a pre-launch gym guy. You have to be at this level for us to be able to help you make it to that next stage. And so I referred him to somebody else because that wasn't my expertise. And so I'm not afraid to tell you when we're the wrong fit. And that's something that I very value for myself in building relationships. But two, we don't just do the services. I'm much more of a transformational type guy. We try to help them build a sustainable lead flow. I don't want to come in and tell people, hey, I'm just going to get you 100 leads tomorrow, because I'll be honest, getting leads, I could buy a leads list off of the internet for $100 and just say, here you go, there's 100 leads. But it's the same as cold calling, right? Like, none of those leads are going to sell. None of those leads are going to do something. You need to get to the point where your members are starting to come to you. That's kind of where you're at that stage. And so we need to work hard, because I need to teach you, not just show you how this is done and do some of the services for you if it's necessarily, but we also need to teach you some ways that you can have control over some of those things, because me just giving you 100 leads isn't going to change your business. There's so, I could tell you 100 times how you and I could go back and forth why that wouldn't change the outcome of a gym, right? You have capacity. Are you offering the right services? Like, all that stuff. But it's having a sustainable lead flow where your customers slowly start to become your advocates. And that's the power of community. And that's what really we try to focus on in building that sustainable lead flow. We kind of go through a process where we will help reposition you correctly. We'll create that experience for you online that matches the ethos of the internal of the gym. And then we'll focus on your reputation management that also becomes a marketing type solution for you, so that you don't necessarily just get 100 leads and have to call 90 of them back. It's like, all right, you're getting 30 qualified people that already have been vetted off of your process, and now they're calling you or coming to your location, and you're basically building a community without necessarily having to put all that effort into sales. Do I think sales is important? Yes, but I definitely don't think it's something that 100% needs to be done within the gym space. I don't. I think it's about connecting in community, and that's where they need to go. And so that's what makes GymMark different. Is my vision for this company is actually helping people find their communities. And so my end result is very similar to, my vision is very similar to the gym owners that we take on. Is they have a purpose and they want to build a community and help people. And that's very similar to what we're trying to do.
I love it. For those of you watching the YouTube, I've been smiling ear to ear because Zach and I had not spoken in person before today. You run your agency exactly the same way I run Feel Strong. Like, you could swap out a couple of words that you just said, and it's how we talk about taking people's journey from wherever they're starting to where they want to go, including the end being, I want you to be autonomous. Like, I want to be the last coach you ever hire, and I want to get fired because you don't need me. Everything's great. You know enough. You can, and when that happens, as something you said with your customers becoming advocates, not only are you healthy and strong and you're a better community member and you're a better mom, you being that has this positive social impact and starts rippling out, and people around you start acting differently and start being affected. And a bunch of those people start becoming more active and caring about their stress management and caring about their sleep. And what you're doing with personal development of gym owners, creating leaders who can then help, discover their communities through mission and values, it's exactly right. It's exactly how we think. And I'm utterly delighted because I didn't know that coming in.
Yeah, I will say it's definitely a differentiator for me, and it's definitely one of those things that it takes time. I mean, I think a lot of people say niching is one of those things that, oh, you build momentum and you build this, but when you're really trying to make a difference and differentiating yourself, there's definitely you definitely have to keep your vision strong so that you can make that impact that you want to make. So I appreciate that, because it sounds like you're doing something very similar. And back to my value of connection, it's great to meet people that are doing something similar, because it shows that there are people out there. And if I could give one tip to anyone on here that's watching this, I would say really just start to take the time to think about things just a little bit differently. I think a lot of people look at, with the way that the environment's going with AI and technology and social media, they look at it as a play of transaction. I think it goes with any industry, but gyms in particular have the ability to start utilizing online and thinking about it much more of a community. Like, this is where I'm going to spread my message to the people that I want to help, and allow my customers and my potential prospects to gain knowledge, to give them value for certain things. So when they're not at the gym, they still have a place that they can go, and that's actually going to build retention. So that's one tip that I would have anyone take away if they're in that shift of, why isn't my gym growing? Why am I stuck in validation stage? Why am I burnout? And just taking that mindset shift and starting to look at yourself a little bit, I think is probably something that's going to move the needle for you faster, going out and buying 100 leads.
Not only will it move the needle faster, but it will lead to better success. And doubling back to something we said earlier, it'll feel good when it happens. And you won't resent the 5 hours of calls you had to do. If they were great and they were for the right people and it's moving the needle forward, and you can point to, no, I'm doing this because we're building this awesome thing. And that's how you build that thing. These are the bricks we need. Then it feels good and it's easy, and you end up feeling, you worked, but it's refreshed, as opposed to just being burnout and kind of chasing that, chasing your own tail all day. Zach, this has been a delight. There's a bunch of coaches and gym owners who want to get in touch with you. How should they do that?
Yeah, you can reach out to us at hello@gymmark.com, or just go to gymmark.com and take a look through our stuff. You can reach out to us. You can reach out to us on there and set up a call with me personally. Because of me being customized service like yourself, I personally don't. I like to connect with people, so I like to have conversations with every single person that comes in to be a potential partner. So go ahead and go through that, and or you can check us out on LinkedIn or YouTube at Zach Colman and grab valuable information there if you need to.
And we will put all of that in the show notes. I'm also going to put a link for that TEDx talk, if that's okay with you, in the show notes, so people can go link to that and watch what we had to say there.
Yes, once it comes out. It's not live yet on the platform, but once it does, I'll send it over to you.
I think it'll work out. We'll talk after the recording, but I think this is going to work out seamlessly.
All right, beautiful.
Zach, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.